This is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
In 5, check for sound. 4,
It's showtime.
3,
Let's
2,
go.
1.
Thanks to Rode Microphones and Harlan Hogan's VoiceOverEssentials.com, the home of the Portabooth Pro. This is the Pro Audio Suite podcast with Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. From LA, George the Tech Whittam, the tech to the VO stars. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy. Following on from last week's show about the female voice, we sort of sidetracked, as we usually do, and went into a discussion about ratios of rooms, like as in your booth or studio, and we didn't really get to any conclusion, if there is a conclusion. So this week we've actually grabbed ourselves a special guest who was the Director of Technology at the Austereo radio network in Australia, and I oversaw the building of the studios here and also about 43 studios in Asia from memory. Des DeKeen, how you doing, Des?
Hi, Andrew. Hi, guys. Very nice to be joining you. I'm going really well here in sunny South Australia. And yes, it was actually just 22 studios in Malaysia, Andrew, but
Wow.
still a lot of studios and a lot of work to be there.
You've actually played with a few different ideas. In fact, we were talking about it just before we got on, and we know these studios well. In fact, it's been a discussion point between Robbo and I for a while. And that's the open concept of studios, bringing the studios into the wider community of the office, basically, which involves a hell of a lot of glass. How the hell did you make that work?
Well, with great difficulty. As a caveat here on my knowledge base, I should say that I used an acoustic consultant and our architect expressly for studio design, because it wasn't a situation where we could just have a go and see if it worked or not. We had to get it right first time. So I did all the concept work, and then I brought in the experts to bring that to reality. The concept that I was working on for our rebuild of our radio stations, the rebuild occurred when we brought two networks together, the Triple M network and the Austereo network, and we had to accommodate two stations from different buildings into one building. So it was an opportunity to create a new environment. We were very keen to create a team feel. I didn't like the two worlds feel, as I described it, between the studios and the on-air staff, where you'd go into a sound block, the door would close, everyone would hush and tiptoe around, and this is the studios, and here and out there is the office area. There's people out there, I don't know what they do, but they're out there doing something. I wanted to break those barriers down and have a situation where the guys in the studio could see all of the office people out there working, and the office people could see the studio, so that they feel part of the end product.
It's like an open kitchen in a bar and grill.
Yeah,
see everything going on.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was the fundamental premise to achieve that. Had some tricks involved. The trickiest one, and one that we couldn't pull off, was the studios in Sydney for Today and Triple M. If you can picture this for a moment, a large square area, very large, and within that area, in two of the corners, each of two corners had the on-air studio. In the middle, between those studios and sitting right in the middle of the large area, was a long desk, which was the producer's desk, which would accommodate 3 to 4 people at that desk. And in the corners just behind them, but the other two corners of this square that I'm describing, one corner had a news studio and the other one had a production studio for producing production pieces for, say, the breakfast show, where you wanted to work very closely with a production guy. Between those studios, it all opened out into the office areas. So there was large sections of walls of open areas that looked out into the office area. the front of the studios, I wanted to be all glass, the on-air studios, and we started out trying to do a big curved glass, just continuous curve. But the acoustic consultant tore his hair out over that for some weeks.
Oh, God. Convex or concave? Because if it's concave, that's really a problem.
Well, it was concave, exactly. Concave to the inside, and of course it posed too many situations with reflections and nodes and so on in the room, resonances. So we compromised and did a series of large glass windows that we were able to angle the glass at various angles, some up and some down. So we broke up a lot of the reflective patterns that might have otherwise existed with continuous glass.
Wow!
So we achieved the results that we wanted to in the end, and the room sounded good. We worked to a reverb time of 200 milliseconds max in the rooms, which allowed you to work on mic and sound on mic, but you could work off mic slightly if you wanted to create a dimension of being away from the microphone, but not having too much slap echo around you. So it just gave that nice, pleasant off-mic sound, which, for comedic work and so on, the guys would often want to work off-mic a little.
If the listeners, me, wanted to see what this looked like, where could we go right now while we're listening and take a look at this thing?
Well, actually, I can help out there. Des, I have some photos which I will post in the show notes of this episode. How's that?
Cool.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I have worked in said studios and they sound amazing, can I just say?
Well, it's an interesting one for you, George, as well, because Joe Cipriano's old studio, that was had two walls of glass, basically, or certainly a corner of glass.
Right.
And how did you cope with that?
Yeah, I since then I did another one for another great talent in the business, Howard Parker. That is like, to me, kind of like a fish tank. Like it has two mitered corner glass. It's a glass box, so like on one end anyway, not entirely, but it's got two mitered glass corners, right? So
Sounded okay.
it was one of those things where, and when I design booths, I realize a lot of the times when I'm doing these, it's building it to the client, to make the client feel good first, and then wondering how to make it sound good second. So, and that's kind of like what you guys are talking about. We went convex glass, we went this amazing looking space, and that's kind of what I ran into there. In the end, it actually worked out fine. I essentially I treated every darn surface that I could to compensate for all that glass. And by some miracle, even though there was another glass door, a window on the other side of the room that's like 7 feet away, it's a small room, a booth, that was parallel to the other window and facing outside. Even with those two parallel windows, we had enough dead absorbing space on the wall closest to the microphone that it somehow compensated. Now, if he was to really project and be more off mic, it might get a little hairy in there. But it's not the kind of stuff that he does, so it's okay. But somehow we made it work. It was one of those things. What you said, we cannot we can't afford to experiment. You guys had to get it right.
Yeah, exactly.
For something that scale. But when I'm building like an individual person's studio in their home, there's a little room for experimentation. So it worked out. It worked on the first try, but I didn't think that it would.
And budgetary considerations are always an issue in a commercial environment.
Budget, time,
they're a bigger issue, I guess, when you're doing a home studio, because you're working on, I would suggest, substantially smaller budgets than you'd work within a commercial situation.
Yeah, but you know what? What I like about the home studio, individual studio scenario, there's a precious little red tape.
Yes, yeah.
You can get things approved on the spot, or even sometimes, rarely, but sometimes a blank check. And and that's a different kind of world, which I feel privileged to get to do that. I haven't done much in the world of commercial design where there's a lot more decision makers. So I can only imagine the challenge.
The question is, and George, you can answer this one as well. Do you have like a set of ratios that you work to, or not?
No. And again, it kind of goes back to I'm working in incredibly constrained dimensions of space. It's very, very rare that we get to start from scratch and say we're going to build a room to these dimensions or to fit within this ideal ratio. So no, it almost never happens that I get to decide we're going to build a room this size. This is the space I have, and we have to make something work in this odd space. What can we do? That's usually what I'm up against.
What about you, Des? Do you have a set of ratios that you guys work to?
No, we don't. But there are some fundamental rules, I guess, and that is that you don't build a cube, an equal dimensioned cube.
I still try to avoid cubes whenever possible.
Yeah, they're a headache for everyone. But invariably, our shapes were a compromise between the aesthetic and the acoustic. Even though we were starting with a blank canvas, we still had space restrictions on how much area was allocated for studios versus how much is allocated to administration and other things that had to share the floor in a building sort of thing. So the answer to the question from my perspective is no, we didn't work to ratios, but there are documented ratios, and I have some information on hand here, which I'm happy to share if you would like me to talk about ratios for a moment.
Sure. Yes, sure, absolutely.
Okay, so the aim is to try and have different and non-related dimensions for length, width, and height of a room. That's to avoid resonances and reflections, often referred to as nodes, where some frequencies will peak, and some rooms can have a big low frequency boost in the room and a null in the high frequencies, or vice versa, depending on the shapes. These are ratios, not actual dimensions, but a documented reference for rooms is with a height of 1, you have a width of 1.14, height of 1, width of 1.14, and a length of 1.39. So that's a sort of a ratio. There's two other versions of that, but they're all multiples of the dimensions, which make sure that there's no direct correlation between any length and any width and any height. So if you use those figures, sort of 1.14 and 1.39 for height, width, and length, that will give you a room which will have minimal nodes and reflections in it. You can go to 1, 1.28 and 1.54, or 1 and 1.6 and 2.33. So they're just multiples. I'm guessing it's a geometric relationship between the three dimensions there.
Right. Are these sometimes called golden ratios, or is that an unrelated term?
I've not heard them called that, but they're just referred to in my documentation as ideal ratios.
Ideal ratios, right?
Yeah. But so there's a lot you can do these days to tune a room. Tuning being to manage the reverberation and reflections down to a point which is acceptable for the use of that particular room. And so you can do a lot to compensate for a room that may not have perfect ratios, such as the ones I've just referred to.
Can I ask about achieving the 200 millisecond decay? Would you guys also call it RT60 over there?
Yes, yeah. To line the room, let's not talk about the isolation, because that's the other issue. The isolation.
Yeah, that's another show almost.
It's another can of worms. So we're assuming that the room is isolated from outside influences and noise and so on. So then to tune the room, we've got timber studs on the walls, placed about 600 mil in my language apart, into those panels, into those studs. Between them we would put panels of fibre wool. There's a product, I did a little bit of research, there's a product which I think is available in the American market known as 705 FRK.
Right.
Yeah.
We call it Owens Corning 705 or 703.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the Corning, Owens Corning 705. You've got
compressed. It's like a compressed bonded fiberglass.
Exactly, with a solid backing on it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So the thing that we found was you don't make we're going to put these panels of fibre wool into the wall between the studs, floor to ceiling. What we don't want to do is do a wall of complete fibre wool, or you can turn the panels around and have the reflective surface facing out. What we found worked best was a checkerboard. So you would alternate fiberglass side out, back side out. So you start out with that. You alternate those on the four walls. That's given you a reference point. From there, we had some audio test gear, so we would do some measurements in the room. In a simpler form, you can do what I call a calibrated hand clap, where you clap in the room and listen to the reverb of the clap. We'll give you an idea. You can stand closer to a wall, walk back to the centre of the room, do a clap again, and you might find that you're reversing some of these panels that we've put in place to have more of the silver side or the backing side exposed to the room, or more of the fibre wool. That gives you a lot of ability to tune the room.
Are these about a half meter square, each of these?
Yeah, they are. They're 24 inch by 48 inch by 2 inches. Yeah.
Standard American dimensions. Yeah, that's the size of the panels that we make. That kind of off the shelf, we say.
Yeah,
that we hang a lot
exactly.
on our booths.
Yeah, you buy a pack of 5 for $132.
Wow, what a weekend.
That's a great deal.
It's one for the budget.
Right.
Owens Corning 705 FRK. Pack of 5, $132. Okay, you put that on the wall, but that's not the finished look that you want. So what we did, we put Velcro fixed timber frames with fabric stretch over the fabric, which would go in front of these fibre wool panels to dress them. Now, the other thing interesting here, and another trick I was taught by our acoustic consultant, you've got to use a fabric which is not too dense, because if it's too dense, it will reduce the effectiveness of the material behind it. Right. So the simple test is to get a piece of the fabric, sample of it, hold it to your mouth and breathe through it. If you can breathe without any effort at all through the cloth, then it's transparent enough and it will work just fine.
Not good for COVID. Is that what you're saying?
I was going to say, what we should do
not make COVID masks out of this material.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, good point. So that's the simple test to select the finished fabric to go in front of the acoustic panels.
Yep. Sometimes we call it speaker cloth. It's essentially the cloth that would be on a speaker grill.
Exactly.
Because it's acoustically transparent as possible. Right.
Same. Yep. So there's that. We carpeted the floors and put the fabric over the front, about a metre off the floor, about 36 inches off the floor. Mm-hmm. We put a rail around, which is just a chair rail. Stop the panels being.
I always forget to do that, but that's a really good idea. So you don't destroy and tear all your fabric with your chairs bashing around.
And then we had perforated metal ceiling panels, which had fiberglass behind those, the same back behind those. So that was our room, nice. And we had a fairly high glass content in the rooms. Keep that in mind. And of course, the glass is angled, generally angled down, with the bottom angling down towards the floor, so that any reflections that hit it are driven down to the carpeted floor to absorb them. So that's pretty much how we obtained the acoustic environment that we needed in those studios.
Would you say the ratio of the glass to everything else was like maybe 30% glass, 70%?
It was huge amounts of glass.
Soft stuff?
Yes, yeah, no, it was probably more than 30. I'd say we'd be in the order of 40 to 42%.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's not easy to knock the RT down.
No,
RT60 down.
Yeah, it was pretty hard to pull it down, but we got there. So that was that was a challenge. And once we'd kind of achieved and knew what we were doing, it made it a little bit easier for subsequent builds that we did.
How much did the announcer's position have to do with like microphone placement, let's call it in general? Because the thing that struck me is that if I had have been building those rooms, I would have had the desk turned sort of 45 degrees just in my head, because that aesthetically that would have looked right. But you had them sort of more in the back end of the rooms, weren't they? They were sort of facing the long dimension of the room.
The long dimension was also the glass
That's
wall,
right.
which looked after the producer's area. And of course, the studios had to be designed to accommodate up to 4 guests around the desk, as well as the anchor person.
They're huge rooms.
These are pretty big. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So it had to be big rooms. Yeah. We worked as a rough figure, and it varied a little with the final design, but we worked to about 26 square metres for a studio. This is for an on-air presentation studio we're talking here.
Yep. So in those on-air studios, though, how much did the mic placement have to do with achieving the results you've got with all that glass then?
Well, we did when we did the measurements of the room. We placed the measuring equipment in the position that the announcer's microphone would be in.
Right.
So we tuned to that. We had enough control to be able to get it right in that location.
And what kind of mics are you guys using in that space?
I was using, I know they've changed the mics now, but I was using Shure SM7s.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're the most forgiving, I would say.
They're forgiving, and a lot of people in our competing stations were using RE20s, and
Right.
I've never liked the sound of an RE20. I think they're too tight down the bottom end, and I like the smooth roundness of the lower frequencies of the SM7. I just think they're a delightful microphone to use in radio.
And are you guys using any kind of automated mixing technology to mix the 4 mics like an auto leveler, or is it all human mixing?
It's all
Never
human
leave a
mixing.
jock to mix.
Cool.
Honestly. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got someone. Let's say it's a breakfast show. You've got three people in the guest positions and an anchor. And
How many times do you walk into an on-air studio to say good day to the jock and the meters are just pinned in the red? It's just
yeah. What we did, we designed in-house. Because I had an excellent design engineer on staff, which was another great benefit. Brett Kelly, he's
another
worth a
great
plug
guy.
because he still is a sensational design engineer. Brett designed for us some little modules, if you like, for each of the guest positions. So the guests had an on-off switch for their microphone. They had their headphones there, of course, and they had a selector switch so that if we were doing remote talent, someone outside of the studio or someone, maybe we did a breakfast show where we had talent in Sydney, Melbourne and Adelaide all linked together and all sounded like they were in the one room on air. So that he had a headphone selector and so on. But so we gave them a mic switch. So really, it was up to the individual person to switch their mic on and off when they wanted to. So that was it. But so the levels would be preset at the start of the shift, and you'd work from there. But
now, with the production studios, though, Des, this is my question. Like, if you're working production, so you've got a couple of decent-sized monitors you're using to get your audio reference. And if you've got glass behind those monitors, which I assume you would have from memory after going to the rooms in Sydney, how did you stop that from ringing the glass?
During a recording session?
No, like if someone's doing a mix, building a spot.
Or you're playing back or mixing down,
Yeah.
Look, I would have to put hand up and say probably guilty as charged, because we didn't work as hard to get the acoustics in a production control room as right as we probably should have. We were usually running Tannoy 12s as mixed down speakers for the main speakers, but we had alternate small speakers, which I've always used to cross-reference a mix down for commercial radio. So they were horrible tones, or orotones were the initial ones.
Yes, horror tones.
Horror tones.
Yeah. I'm just trying to remember what the ones that we went to later on. Do
you remember, Robbo?
I'm trying to think, because I used to freelance for Sideshow in production downstairs, and I'm thinking that was was there Genelecs down there as the B speakers?
Yes, there might have been. Yeah. I think we did have some Genelecs. Yeah, I'm not sure that became our
maybe
standard,
that was cited.
However, but
do you guys consider the Tannoy 12s sort of a standard? Like those are pretty much, you're going to find them in each room, no matter what.
Yes, they were pretty much standard in the on-air studios and productions. Yeah. And often back into the production booth too, for playback.
I got to say though, I did work in, as I mentioned, I've worked in Sidey's studio a lot, and it's not terrible. I mean, you can see the struggles that you would have had with the amount of glass in those rooms, but considering everything, they're not terrible sounding rooms. I mean, it's not hard to pull a good mix in there.
Yeah, thank you. That's good to hear. We still measured the rooms and adjusted the panels as we did the absorbing and reflecting materials. And the same cloth panel treatments on the walls. Everything was the same, but probably not as much attention that we could have otherwise given to the relationship between the main monitors and the glass around them. Yeah.
Well, now it's like if you've got a particularly picky-eared engineer, you can run like SonarWorks or something, and you could flatten out the low end a bit to compensate if you had to. You can do some of that in software.
I've never been a fan of mixing down on headphones, but I see it happening a lot. Is it honest enough?
There's some good tricks out there these days, and a couple of Waves and stuff like that have room emulation plugins that sort of don't give you the hard left-right, if you know what I mean. So it gives you a more realistic room sound in your headphones. But I've tried it and I still can't get used to it, Des. Would be my answer to that. I'm sure there's others out there who have. And I see plenty of YouTube videos of some of the bigger mixing guys going, hey, if I'm not mixing in the perfect room, I'll go to headphones. I still struggle with it, I'll be honest.
Yeah. It just takes you too far away from reality.
Yeah, I agree.
It's difficult because if you know your room, it's great. But if you don't know your room, then you don't really know what you're mixing. And so I kind of get why people do mix in headphones.
Yeah,
at least they have something consistent.
Can I take you a couple of steps back, Des? You were talking about the perfect cube room. I've actually just moved house 6 months ago, and the room that is now slowly becoming my new home studio is the perfect cube. And I'm
hello.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm doing battle with the low end, too much of the low end. Besides bass trap in the corners, what other ideas should I be looking at? And this is a purely selfish question, but having asked it, I'm sure there'll be other people out there who are experiencing the same thing. So I'm sure we're helping more than just me, but it is a very selfish question.
Bass trapping would be my go-to solution. It becomes a little more complex. You really have to you have to do like a frequency sweep of the room to see where the nodes and the antinodes are, your peaks and dips in the room. And you may be able to, through using that process that I talked about with reflective and non-reflective materials around the walls, you may be able to adjust to minimise the effect. I think if you've got a big low frequency lump in the room, you're going to need a trap to manage that initially, but then you can kind of fine tune it a bit more with wall treatments.
Everything you were describing in those rooms so far to me sounded like they were all flush or flat panels, not so much corner panels or offset panels or ceiling clouds that are suspended or anything like that.
That's true, yes.
Right, so the room isn't tuned. It's first and foremost tuned for mics and secondarily for mixing, which is, it's very hard to do it for both. I mean, it's it's nearly impossible, especially if you have all that glass. But in your case, don't forget that there's more corners in your room than you think of, right? There's more than 4. There's actually 12.
Yeah.
And you can bass trap the top corners as well. I'm a big fan of putting bass traps in the upper corners between the ceiling and the walls.
Okay.
You can hide a lot more bass trapping in those areas without soaking up as much of the room, losing so much room in your space, I guess. And also, have you guys, any of you experimented with what I guess we would call trihedral corner traps?
I've made
the ones that go in the tri-corners.
I made
some
for my
companies
room.
that make those.
I've actually chucked them up.
Oh yeah,
It seems to have helped a little bit. I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a lot of bass traps in my booth. The corner traps, the Auralex triangular corner traps.
Right.
So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6. So 3 corners are trapped, but there's the glass door in one corner, so there's no room for a corner trap there. And then a couple of big cubes, big Auralex cubes that are like 2-foot cubes with teeth cut into them. There's 2 of those.
Your booth sounds pretty nice, I've got to say, Andrew.
Yeah, well, you're the only person on this panel that's actually been here.
There you go.
Yeah. I went in and kicked the tyres. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
Andrew, do you primarily work seated or standing or both?
Seated. And there is a reason for that. Sometimes I prefer to stand up, but my seat, because the ceiling is raked, I try to keep the mic as low as I can.
The ceiling's very low, you've got to duck down.
You actually have to lie down in there. But
well, that's a good point. I have found that in a lot of these people's home booths and a lot of these prefabricated booths, there's a lot of brands now.
Yeah.
The ceiling height is the major enemy. And, for some people, it's just like, if you really want to get that sound tightened up, get rid of that bass reflex, sit down. Or at least try to drop the mic 3 to 6 inches from where it is, because that makes a tremendous difference sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I've actually got mine set up so it actually does sit exactly in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
That's front to back, side to side, and floor to ceiling.
That's a pretty good idea.
So it's an equal distance, and it seems to work all right. So,
have you guys experimented at all with different pattern mics? So you guys were using dynamic SM7s, and we've talked about, and we've tested as well, experimenting with figure 8 microphone patterns.
Yeah.
Because of their ability to really effectively reject reflections. Of course, they pick up everything in the back, so they're not going to work great in maybe a 4-up microphone room. That might be a real challenge to make good use of figure 8 mics, but that can be another way to compensate. Maybe more important in small spaces where there's hard surfaces or reflective glass really close to the mic, but that's been a good cheat I've been employing lately for folks, is trying out figure 8 pattern to compensate.
Yeah. What's the situation you would do that in, George? Is that like a home recording studio?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people are in really small spaces, and cardioid mics, they hear way too much sound on their sides and top and bottom. So, if you go figure 8, now those sides, tops, and bottom are nullified. So the microphone hears almost nothing at its waistline. Imagine drawing a circle around the waistline of the mic, and that area is just dead. So if you're real close to the ceiling, now you've gotten rid of that resonance for the most part at the ceiling. And likewise, if you have a computer monitor or a window just to the right of the microphone, where a cardioid would still pick up quite a bit of standing waves, the figure 8 wouldn't hear it anymore. And I've just, so many people as of lately here in LA are getting U87s because they're working on animation and stuff, and they're saying you need to go get one of these mics. So there's people investing in these $3,000 plus mics and never even thinking of trying to change the pattern. And I just say, give it a shot. Let's see how it sounds. And it's amazing how often it fixes a weird reflection and resonance issues in some of the better known isolation booths. I don't want to call anybody out because there's some really great brands that I know very well, but some of them acoustically still have real problems, and switching that pattern can just immediately fix one of the bigger problems.
Going to say, I actually, because we've talked about this before, and George knows that I actually do use figure 8 on the large condenser. I just like the sound of it better.
Yes, well, it just brings up another very good point that George has made very succinctly, and that is, if you want to have ultimate control over the environment, make sure you've got a microphone with a switchable pattern so that you can try different patterns, maybe for different situations, But I think the path to achieving the best result is to have as much control as you can over as many aspects as you can, so that you do have somewhere to go if you need to make some changes to optimize the result that you're after.
Have you experimented with some of these really new bleeding edge microphones that let you essentially steer the pickup pattern?
No, I haven't, because I'm not in a situation now where I might do that. Yeah, so no, I haven't, George, no.
Yeah, we got to try out, and Andrew now has the OC818 made by Austrian Audio. And that microphone allows you to either inside the mic internally or in post steer the pickup pattern where you want it to go and tune it to be what you want.
Wow.
So you can fix it. Either you can fix it in real time or you can fix it in post.
Yeah.
By recording both capsules in the microphone, which is just crazy. It's amazing. And then there's another mic I've done tests with called the Townsend Labs Sphere L22, which takes that whole thing to another level of sophistication, actually. Same idea, just even more control, and also microphone models where you can have your mic magically transform into a U47, for example.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing what we're being able to do now in a software environment. It's making up a lot for some of the issues, but still not a substitute for.
Are they affordable microphones that you're talking of here? Or
I think so. I mean, we were just talking about a U87, so let's say that's your bar. Yeah. For 3,000 plus. These are all half to a third that price. So reasonable.
Yeah, because the Austrian Audio is $1,000 US, and George and I, George did a video with him in LA and me here, and George basically giving orders of how to adjust my mic to sound different, and it was it's pretty amazing. So for someone like George who's helping someone out remotely, what a perfect tool to have.
Yeah.
It's really quite interesting. Yeah, I can't really change the size and shape of the room remotely. It's not Inception or something yet, but to be able to at least change the way the mic hears the voice so I can just steer it where it needs to go is kind of a revelation. I use the Townsend Labs in conjunction with the Apollo hardware, the Universal Audio Apollo, where you can run this plug-in and hear the microphone's adjustments of its pickup patterns in real time. And I'm listening to it and literally steering its pickup pattern. Like, let's point it over here a little bit, and let's reduce the proximity effect just a tad, and that kind of thing. And it's remarkable. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah. Now, Des, I've got one question for you.
Sure.
What has been your favourite studio, whether you designed it or you worked in it?
Radio studios, look, because I focused on the overall result, Andrew, so I took into account not just the acoustic aspect, but the physical appearance and the functionality of the studio spaces. The Austereo Sydney studios would be my favourite because I just felt that epitomised everything that I was looking to achieve with making the studios part of the overall operation. And I felt very proud of what I achieved there with that, to be honest. So, yep, that would be my choice of a studio that I was involved in. I haven't seen enough recording studios. I did go to EMI in Sydney at one stage many years ago, but I don't really recall enough of what they were like. I knew they were pretty good studios, but
yeah, because EMI, that was Richard Lush, the Beatles
Yes.
engineer. He was involved in setting that up, I think, from memory, back in the early 70s.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I just wanted to, before we get too far away from just the acoustic aspect of studios, if I was doing a home studio or a studio where I wanted to maximise flexibility, I would probably favour a hard wooden floor with rugs on it that you can remove, so that you can again gives you another control aspect over the acoustic qualities of the room. We didn't do it in radio. I kind of wish I had, because I think it was an aspect that I'd probably not given enough attention to. We always had carpet on the floors in the studios, but it would have been nicer to have a removable carpet so that you could adjust the room.
And also, so you didn't burn holes in the carpet.
Yes.
And I'm just marking down another tick for my room design.
Yeah, I used to just compulsorily say, put down some nice, medium pile carpet, for a home booth. But I've kind of changed my tune, figuratively, literally, whatever you want to joke, you want to insert there, and said, now let's actually put in manufactured floor, hard floor, or whatever, and put down a rug or put down a oriental rug, whatever. To get a look and a sound, and if you need it, if you need to. Taking a cue really from, I guess, music studios that do that a lot.
It is. It's a nice feel. It's almost like a homely feel to a studio, as well as working nicely acoustically. It gives you some.
Musicians are all about the vibe, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
They want a really heavy vibe.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I deal with personally is really, like I said, really small spaces. How much have you had to deal in that environment where you're like the booth or the voiceover space is, let's say, 1 by 1.2 meters, something like that? Does that come across your plate sometimes?
Probably a little bit bigger than that, I'd say, George, just because they can become quite claustrophobic if they are that size, and it's not the environment you want to create.
If you're starting from scratch, you would never choose to make a room that small.
Yeah.
What's the smallest you would prefer to go? If it's literally a booth for one person, what would be the smallest?
Yeah. So that would be like a voice tracking booth or a news presentation booth. So it would be probably being about 1.5 meters by maybe 2.5 meters, something in that area. Maybe heading towards 3 meters.
It's a nice size. Yeah.
Yeah, and yes, it's a comfortable size.
We would say it's like about 6 by 10 feet, roughly. Which is nice.
Yeah. And in the case of a news studio, you would often have a second position there where you might have a sports guy in there or something.
Yeah.
But the other thing is you would have much less glass than you have in the on-air studios. You have one large window so that there's good eye contact between the on-air presenter and the news studio. But that was pretty much it. So you could reduce the amount of glass, and if it's a voice tracking studio, you don't need any glass really. It's just a little dark hole you disappear into for nothing.
Exactly.
Do you guys like to use condenser mics in those, or do you leave it up to the producer what mic they're going to use, I guess?
Well, we match the microphone with the on-air microphone because you want the pre-recorded voice tracking to sound the same as
Sure, true. Yes. Yeah, right.
I would have the same in all on-air studios, including voice tracking studios.
Now, talking about microphones, are you happy to come back next week and talk about microphones, Des?
Yes, I could. I'm not sure how much I can contribute, but...
Beautiful. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode, and all the best in Adelaide. See you next week.
Thank you very much, and lovely to chat to you all.
Nice.
Thanks, Des. That's cool. That's really cool. We so rarely talk about that kind of subject. It's really great.
I feel very honoured to be part of it, and I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
That was the Pro Audio Suite. If you have any questions or ideas for a show, let us know via our Facebook, the Pro Audio Suite Podcast.
You look for trouble.